What's up, movie fans? Guys, back when Phase 4 of the MCU ended in 2022, I ranked every MCU movie for, I think, the third time on my channel, and back then I thought, okay, this is how I'm going to do things from now on. I will rank every MCU movie when a phase ends. So the next time I do it will be in 2025 when Phase 5 ends. Well, it's 2025, Phase 5 of the MCU has ended, and I'm not doing it. There's just too many movies for me to keep doing this every few years. I'm just going to wait another 2 years for when Avengers Secret Wars comes out, and then I promise I will rank every MCU movie, but there's no way I'm doing it before then. If you want to see my ranking of every MCU movie, just go on my Letterboxd. I have a list there. I figured instead of ranking every MCU movie, I could at the very least do a quick compromise. So today, I am going to rank every MCU movie in the multiverse saga, aka every MCU movie that has come out post-Avengers Endgame. So in total, there are 15 movies on this list. Let's just get straight into it because this is probably going to be a long video. Number 15, Thor: Love and Thunder. One of the most disappointing movies in the entire MCU. When I first watched this movie, when it came out 3 years ago, I actually wasn't negative on it. I think I gave it a 7 out of 10, and that is one of the most insane reviews that I have ever made on this channel because this movie does not deserve a 7 out of 10. This movie is really bad, and I think in the years since then, I have decided that this is my least favorite movie in the MCU. It's just a very bafflingly misguided movie where if you look at this movie on paper, it should be one of the darkest movies in the entire MCU, where the entire plot centers around Gore the God Butcher, who believes that gods are responsible for everything bad that happens in the world, so he wants to kill all of the gods, just straight up commit genocide. That is incredibly dark, and then you have a plotline about how Jane Foster has cancer, a plotline about how Thor is kind of dealing with the trauma of losing everybody that he's loved, and it's like such a dark story. And then the movie is a comedy. Like, this is one of the most overtly comedic movies in the entire MCU where, oh, you have Gore trying to kill all the gods and kidnapping children, but also we're gonna have Russell Crowe doing this ridiculous Greek accent as Zeus. And oh, we have Thor dealing with all of this trauma, but also we're gonna have him be really, really goofy and stupid, and he has these screaming goats that just keep on screaming throughout the whole movie, and we're going to play that for laughs the whole time, and oh, Jane Foster, she's dealing with her cancer, but also she's working on her catchphrases. So at one point in this movie, she's gonna say to Gore, "Eat my hammer!" And it's like, what was the goal here? Why did you take an incredibly dark, ambitious story and try to make it comedic? And when you were doing that, why didn't you at least make the movie funny? Because it's not. Like, it's just a very misguided movie that I think is probably the worst film in the MCU. Number 14, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Now, this movie to me is not as frustrating or unwatchable as Thor: Love and Thunder, but I would describe Quantumania as the most soulless and the most spineless movie in the entire MCU, where on the soulless side of things, this movie feels entirely like an MCU stepping stone. It doesn't feel like they made the movie because they had a story to tell about Ant-Man. It feels like they made this movie because they had to set up Kang the Conqueror as the big new villain of the MCU. So this entire movie is essentially about setting up Kang, and everything that happens with Ant-Man and his arc in this movie feels incredibly sidelined, and as a result, it doesn't really feel like he has an arc in this movie. But then the other really weird element of this film is that it's also spineless. This is a movie that feels like it is trying to play everything incredibly safe. And as a result, even though this whole movie is about setting up Kang the Conqueror as the new big bad of the MCU, it feels like the movie is scared to actually have him do anything that bad. Like, none of the characters die in this movie, there's no consequences, and Ant-Man wins at the end of the movie. Just irrefutably, he has a win where Kang the Conqueror gets defeated by ants. So, it's a movie that was compromised to set up Avengers the Kang Dynasty, also did a bad job setting up Avengers the Kang Dynasty, and also Avengers the Kang Dynasty was canceled, so that movie's never coming out anymore. So, in the end, this entire movie was just a giant net negative for everyone. Number 13, The Marvels. Now, I'll be honest, I feel kind of bad panning The Marvels as hard as I do the movies at the bottom of the list, because at the very least, I can say that The Marvels is a fun movie. It was very clear that when they went into this movie, they didn't have any tonal inconsistencies at all. They went into this movie wanting to make a goofy superhero comedy that doesn't take itself too seriously. And that is what they made. And so it can be a fun movie. It has some goofy concepts. I think the three leads are doing pretty good jobs, especially Iman Vellani. She's just fantastic as Miss Marvel. I think that this is one of the most rushed and poorly thought out movies in the entire MCU. It feels like the entire story of this movie is just incredibly inconsistent and weird, where it's like the villain's plan is that she wants to steal the air and water from other planets, which is kind of a ridiculous thing to say out loud, but that's what she's trying to do in this movie. Like, just open a portal in the water of this one planet, steal their water, and bring it to her planet. Like, that's her goal in this movie. And then also, she wants to steal Earth's sun. But at the end of the movie, Captain Marvel realizes that Dar-Benn doesn't actually need to steal Earth's sun, because Captain Marvel herself can just reignite the sun of Dar-Benn's planet. She could have done that the whole time? Like, did you think about the implications of that at all? Like, Captain Marvel's kind of a jerk in that case. And then also, they shoehorn in multiverse connections at the end that just don't feel like they fit in this story at all. So, yeah, a very weirdly put together movie, but I have more fun with it than the bottom two. Number 12, Eternals. Eternals is another movie that I was actually a lot more positive on when I first saw it, but in the years since then, I have realized that this is a movie that is a little bit too ambitious for its own good. I like the stuff that they're trying to do here, where It's about these beings who have been on Earth for thousands of years, and they're basically realizing that they were sent to this planet to sacrifice humanity in order to help several other planets in the universe. And so there's this very interesting moral conflict between the Eternals where they're trying to decide if it is worth sacrificing humanity to save millions of other planets. And that's kind of an interesting moral conflict. And I like the fact that there's side picking and there's like different Eternals who have different viewpoints on all of this. But there's a big problem, and that is there's just too many characters. You have 10 Eternals that you have to follow in this movie, plus a few other supporting characters, like the one villain, the Deviant, who shows up in this movie and is kind of a big part of the plot. And it's like, it kind of gets crumbled under the weight of its own ambitions, where at a certain point, you just have to ask yourself, why are some of these characters even in this movie? Like, some of them die halfway through. Kaman Nanjiani's character just leaves the movie before the final battle. He's like, peace out, guys. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. And then the Deviant villain basically amounts to nothing, and he just gets thrown away and killed like it's nothing. So it's just a very weird, overstuffed film. I really respect what they were going for with Eternals, but I think that they just executed it poorly. Number 11, Captain America: Brave New World. One of the 3 new MCU movies that just came out this year, and I was pretty disappointed by this film. I wanted to like it, and I will say, I think the best thing about the movie is that the 2 leads are really trying their best. Anthony Mackie, I think, gives a great performance as Captain America, and Harrison Ford does a great performance as President Ross, the president of the US, who becomes Red Hulk in this movie. Like, they're both doing a good job, and I did really enjoy their performances. I think Brave New World is just a movie that has a lot of problems, where you can tell they were trying to make the next Captain America: Winter Soldier, a movie that has like this kind of spy thriller tone and all of these different twists and turns, but it's nowhere near that intelligent. Its story feels like it's duct taped together with really obvious reshoots, and then the villain in this movie, the leader, I thought was a massive disappointment because he's supposed to be an insanely intelligent villain, and he's just not. Like, I still don't understand certain aspects of his plan. Like, why does he even need Giancarlo Esposito's character? I genuinely feel like I missed things, because to me, it doesn't feel like Giancarlo Esposito has a reason to be in this movie at all. And then beyond that, they just made incredibly weird decisions along the way with this movie, where for some reason, they gave away that Red Hulk was in this movie in the trailers, even though when you watch the movie, that was clearly supposed to be a big twist, which I think affected my enjoyment of the movie. So yeah, I think this movie could have been good, but it got caught in a lot of really weird, bad decision making. Number 10, Spider-Man: Far From Home. Now, okay, I will say, I think this is where we cross into the movies that I'm a little bit more positive on. I do not dislike Spider-Man: Far From Home. As a matter of fact, when I first saw this movie years ago, I actually really liked it. But unfortunately, I think over the years, my flaws that I have with this movie have become a little bit more apparent. getting into the things that I like first, I like the way that it explores the aftermath of Avengers Endgame, where in this movie, Peter is kind of sad about Tony's death, and throughout the movie, he's kind of trying to live up to Tony's legacy, but eventually he realizes that that's not what he has to do, and he just has to be his own hero and step out of Tony Stark's shadow. I think that that was a really cool arc for him to have. I really like Mysterio in this movie. I think he's a great, manipulative, hateable villain. I love the illusion sequences with him. Like, yeah, there's a lot of things that I really enjoy about this movie. But I think the problem is that the plot of this movie just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, where the entire plot of the film hinges on you believing that not only did Tony Stark leave these incredibly dangerous drone-controlling glasses to a teenager, he did it during a time frame where that teenager was supposed to be dead. That doesn't make any sense at all. And then beyond that, I think at times this movie can match the same high school comedy style that Homecoming had, but at times it can also feel like the comedy is maybe a little bit too much. Like, I'm not crazy about a lot of the jokes they make about the blip and stuff like that. I'm also not crazy about Skrull Nick Fury just being very incompetent throughout this entire movie. So yeah, a good enough movie, but one that has a lot of problems in my opinion. Number 9 is Black Widow. And okay, real quick, I'm just going to say, this is a movie that I defend a lot, because a lot of people say that Black Widow is one of the worst movies in the entire MCU, and I really don't understand that. Don't get me wrong, this movie is not great, but it is nowhere near the same level as the movies that we've discussed so far that are just really bad, except for Far From Home. That one's okay. But, like, Black Widow, I think it's fine. It's a fun, small-scale spy movie. I don't think there's anything to really get mad about in this movie. It's just fine. Like, it's got some really cool action sequences. I think it adds a lot to Natasha's character, since you get to see a lot more of her backstory and understand why she is the way that she is and what happened in her past, and you have her kind of having this arc where she has to face her past, and then you've got a lot of great supporting characters in the movie, Yelena and Red Guardian obviously being the best parts of the movie, so good in fact that they are now fan favorite characters thanks to Thunderbolts. Yeah, it has a lot of really good elements to it. I do have a few problems with the film. Primarily, I don't like the villains. I think that Dreykov is super generic, and Taskmaster, they just kind of wasted by making Taskmaster into a brainwashed soldier. So, yeah, a few things about the movie that I'm not crazy about, but in general, I think it's fine. Number 8, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Now, we've talked a lot in this video so far about movies that I think have very half-baked stories that were kind of ruined behind the scenes, like Quantumania, The Marvels, Brave New World. Movies where I feel like Marvel was so focused on turning them into MCU stepping stones that they kind of compromised their stories. And I think Multiverse of Madness also fits into that category, where the cast of this movie has been insanely open about how troubled the production of this movie was, where the actress who plays America Chavez has straight up said that they rewrote the movie 33 times. Elizabeth Olsen has said that she stopped reading drafts of the script because she knew that everything was just going to change again the next day. And Haley Atwell has said that they filmed multiple cameos of Illuminati members that were going to show up in this movie that they never used. Like, they did not know when they were making the movie who was actually going to make it into the movie and who was not. So, yeah, it's a movie that had a very troubled production, and to a certain extent, that makes it kind of soulless, but also, compared to all of the other movies in the MCU that are like that, this one is the best case scenario. Because at least this movie actually has style to it. This movie was directed by Sam Raimi, and you can feel that. You can feel Sam Raimi all over this movie, where it's campy. It has aspects to it that are like horror. It has his signature style of music. It has like his signature like style of directing just all over it. And so it feels very Sam Raimi. It feels like Sam Raimi was held back because, once again, Marvel kind of ruined this movie behind the scenes. But still, it's got style. I like Doctor Strange's arc in this movie about him kind of realizing that he needs to step back and he's not the most important person in the world and he's not the end-all be-all of everything. And then I also like Scarlet Witch as the villain in this movie. I think she's one of the MCU's best villains, mainly because you got to see her downfall into villainy before this movie, and then it pays off in a great way in this film. So, yeah, I think Multiverse of Madness is another movie that has problems, but of the soulless, ruined behind-the-scenes MCU movies, this is the best one. Number 7, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Now, in direct contrast to a lot of these movies that I was more positive on when I first saw them, I was actually pretty hard on Shang-Chi a few years ago when I first saw it, and I said that I just didn't really get the hype behind the movie, and I thought it was very flawed. Since then, I've come around on it a little bit, and I think that it is better than I originally gave it credit for. I still have problems with it. I still think that Shang-Chi isn't the most interesting protagonist in the world. It goes a little bit too far with the Marvel humor. It has a little bit of an overly weird third act that just goes a lot into CGI monsters hitting each other. But I think as a whole, the movie has a lot of really great things in it. I think the Mandarin, the real Mandarin that finally shows up in this movie, is one of the best MCU villains. Once again, I think he's compelling, he's threatening, he's all of those things. I do think there are interesting elements to Shang-Chi. I think he's a fun protagonist. He just doesn't have the most complete arc. Also, I think this movie has some of the best action in the entire MCU. Like, that is the main draw of this movie. It's just really cool to see an MCU movie that has legitimately great hand-to-hand combat that just makes you go like, wow, that was cool. Like, this is some of the best, most well-thought-out action in the entire MCU, and that is the biggest plus I can give the movie. So, yeah, I'm still not crazy about it. I'm not gonna say it's one of the best movies that the MCU has made since Endgame, but it's a good one. Number 6, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Now, I will confess, I don't think my memory of this movie is that amazing because, fun fact, I have not seen Black Panther: Wakanda Forever since it first came out in November of 2022. So, I remember the basic plot, but there's a lot of elements of this movie where I feel like I should probably rewatch it at some point, but everything that I do remember about this movie, I really liked. I think that they took a terrible situation that they had behind the scenes where their lead, Chadwick Boseman, died, and they had to find a way to make the movie without him, and they ended up turning the movie into this really touching tribute to Chadwick Boseman that I thought was pretty emotionally powerful, and I was very, very happy about that. I thought that they made the best of a bad situation. I think they gave pretty much all of the main characters compelling arcs in this movie, especially Shuri, who I just really love her arc about her dealing with the trauma over T'Challa's death. Like, all of that stuff is really interesting and emotional. I think Namor is a great MCU villain. This era really does have a lot of really good villains in the MCU. That's the one thing that I will give the Multiverse Saga over the Infinity Saga. They rarely ever miss with their villains. Overall, it is a pretty emotional film that I wouldn't say is the most fun to watch. Like, I haven't rewatched it since it first came out, because it is a movie that feels kind of sad and kind of feels like a funeral, but still a very good movie. Number 5, in direct contrast to probably one of the saddest movies that the MCU has made since Endgame, we get into the most overtly comedic movie that the MCU has made since Endgame, Deadpool and Wolverine. And in my opinion, this movie is just a ton of fun. Like, I still don't think that the story of this movie is anything particularly amazing. Like, it's not bad, but it's not a great story. But at the end of the day, that doesn't matter. I don't care that this movie's story isn't anything that special. This film was just an excuse to give us a buddy comedy between Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool and Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, and they did it. And it was a ton of fun. It is a hilarious, violent ride. It's the most meta movie that the MCU has ever made, because its plot is straight up a metaphor for the Fox-Disney merger, which I actually do think is kind of funny and is the one thing that I do really like about the plot of this movie. And then it also just has a lot of really cool multiversal cameos, but the cameos in this movie don't feel like blind fan service to me. In a way, they kind of feel like the movie is paying tribute to the era of Marvel before the MCU, which I think is very respectable. I don't think it's as amazing as some people say it is, but it is a very, very fun, enjoyable movie. Alright guys, this is where we cross over the threshold. This is where we get into the really good movies. These next 4 are the movies that the MCU has made since Endgame that I think legitimately stand toe-to-toe with some of the best, most fun movies in the Infinity Saga, because these next 4 are just very good films. So, number 4, we have Thunderbolts, one of the newest movies that the MCU has made since it just came out this year. This is just a very special film that I think brought me back to the good old days of the MCU. Like, one of the coolest things about the MCU when it worked was you could bring together all of these different characters from all of these different franchises in Avengers movies and make it feel incredibly fun, make it come together naturally, and make it feel earned and satisfying. Thunderbolts does that for me. Like, obviously, it's not working with the same high-level characters that the Avengers movies are working with, but brings in all of these different supporting anti-heroes from a bunch of different movies, and it has fun with them. Like, they have great interactions with each other. I love their character arcs. I think they all grow and change over the course of the movie, and they feel different by the end of it. I think this movie took great characters like Yelena, Bucky, and turned them into even better characters, and then it took characters that I didn't care too much about, like John Walker and Ghost, and it turned them into great characters who I now really like and I can't wait to see again. And then the other thing that's really cool about Thunderbolts is that it's an MCU movie that legitimately has something to say. This movie is not just generic superhero movie number 10. This is a film that actually has themes about trauma, depression, mental health, that it explores really well, and as a result, I think the movie comes together in a pretty emotional, satisfying way. So yeah, easily one of the best movies that the MCU has made since Endgame. Number 3, Spider-Man No Way Home. I need to defend this movie real quick too, because I think the reception that this movie has gotten in recent years is very unfair. There's a lot of people saying that Spider-Man No Way Home wasn't actually that good. It's an okay movie that just got blown out of proportion because it has a bunch of nostalgic multiverse cameos. But if you actually watch the movie now, you'll realize, it's just alright. All of you people are wrong. You're just wrong. Like, I was concerned about that when this movie was first coming out. You can go back to my channel in 2021 and you'll see that a week before No Way Home came out, I made a video talking about all of my concerns with this movie and how I was concerned that it was going to be an overstuffed mess. And then I saw the movie, and it blew me away, not just because it has multiverse cameos, but because it used those cameos to tell a Spider-Man story worth telling. It's a movie all about Peter making some really dumb, irresponsible choices, and then over the course of the film, he learns responsibility. He ends up trusting these multiversal villains. It leads to his Aunt May dying, and then through that, they have this Peter learn responsibility, which he does with the help of the other Spider-Men. The other Spider-Men and the multiversal villains are crucial to this film, giving Tom Holland's Peter Parker a fantastic arc where at the end of the movie, he does sacrifice everything and end up having the entire world forget who he is just to save everybody. And so I think that this is actually a pretty powerful film from a story perspective that also happens to be a really fun movie because you get to see the 3 Spider-Men interacting in one movie. Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland having fun together and fighting their villains in one movie. You get to see the multiversal villains again. You get to see them improved. You get to see Willem Dafoe be one of the best villains in the MCU when he was already one of the best superhero movie villains. And so, yeah, I think this is a great film, way better than people make it out to be. Number 2, The Fantastic Four: First Steps. The newest movie in the MCU, And I am so happy that this movie is this high on the list. Seriously, I have wanted this movie for my entire life. I have wanted to see the Fantastic Four enter the MCU for my entire life since I was a child. And this movie finally gave that to me. And I am just so happy with the way that this film turned out. I just think that it's a very beautiful, heartfelt story about the Fantastic Four, who are a family in this movie. They feel like a family. The entire movie is about them being a family, and it's about them preparing for Reed and Sue to have a child, so they're about to have a new member in their family, and then they learn that Galactus is coming. Their entire world is at risk, and it's just this very, very heartwarming movie where it's about a family desperately trying to save their planet and save their child. It's a very emotional movie. It's a movie that manages to fill you with dread because of how it portrays Galactus as this monster where you're genuinely unsure of how they're going to stop him. And it's a movie that can be very, very heartwarming because of the family dynamic, the community that this family kind of has around them in New York. And it's also a movie that has more style to it, where it takes place in an alternate universe that's very retro-futuristic, and you get to have fun in this new universe with new world building. So, yeah, I loved the Fantastic Four First Steps. I'm very happy with how it turned out, and so this was an easy pick for number 2 on my list. Number 1 was pretty easy for me. I'm going to be real here. There was nothing else that it could have possibly been on this list. Number 1 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Out of every MCU movie ever, not just in the multiverse saga, but ever in the entire MCU, Guardians 3 is the one that made me feel the most. This entire movie is just devoted to ending the story of the Guardians of the Galaxy. It has no other goal. It's just trying to give us one last adventure with these characters before sending them off. And it did such a great job. It's just such an emotional movie. Every character gets a full arc in this movie. All of them. They all get an arc, and it all leads to a place that just feels very satisfying and very right, where at the end of this movie, when Peter Quill leaves the team and goes to Earth to meet his grandfather, that feels earned. You feel that. When he realizes that he can't be with Gamora, and Gamora goes off on her own to be with the Ravagers, you feel that. When Drax stays with the children to try and be a parent to them, you feel that. When Rocket becomes the leader of the team after going through all of the pain and suffering that he went through in this entire franchise, you cry. Like, I cry during this movie every time I watched it. It is easily the most emotionally powerful film in the entire MCU to me. And then it's also just a fun time. Like, it's a fun adventure with the Guardians of the Galaxy that has them facing a villain who you despise. High Evolutionary is still the most hateable Marvel villain ever. I wanted to punch him throughout this entire movie. And then you have awesome sequences like the long take sequence where they're fighting the High Evolutionary's guards. This is just a great movie. It's one of the best MCU movies, and it is easily the best movie that the MCU has made post-Endgame. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. Comment down below, what is your favorite post-Endgame MCU movie? And see ya, movie fans.